Rain came down hard, relentless, rattling the porch roof like it wanted inside. The knock cut through it, sharp, desperate. Out of rhythm, nothing like the casual taps of neighbors. He froze in the hallway, socked feet planted on the wood floor, heart stalling as his mind raced through a dozen wrong possibilities. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. From the living room, a cartoon laughed, and then his daughter laughed with it. Small and bright, unaware of the night pressing in, he moved to the door slowly, instinct screaming caution. One hand wrapped around the deadbolt, the other hovering, unsure. Through the frosted glass, he saw only a dark shape shifting, rainwater streaking down like tears. Another knock came, harder this time, followed by a faint inhale, someone trying not to sob. He cracked the door just enough to see. A girl stood there, drenched, hair plastered to her face, dress clinging like it weighed 100 pounds. Rain ran off her chin. Her arms locked tight around her body as if holding herself together. Her eyes lifted to his, wide and raw, carrying fear so naked it stole the air from his lungs. She didn't step forward. She didn't ask. She just stood there, trembling, as if one wrong move might shatter her. Behind him, his daughter called his name, curious, trusting. The sound sliced him open. His gaze flicked back to the girl, to the bruise blooming faintly along her collarbone, to the way her shoulders flinched at the thunder overhead. This wasn't trouble knocking politely. This was danger soaked through, standing barefoot on his welcome mat. Every instinct he'd sharpened since becoming a single father screamed risk, screamed protect the child behind him. His fingers tightened on the lock, pulse hammering. Then the girl whispered, voice almost lost to the rain. Please, just one night, no drama, no story, just survival. The wind shoved Rain against his legs, cold and insistent. He looked once more down the hallway, toward the light and laughter he'd built to keep the world out. Then he stepped back, opening the door wider, placing his body between the storm and his home. She stepped inside like someone entering sacred ground, careful, almost apologetic, as if the floor might give way beneath her. Water dripped from her hair, her sleeves, her hem, leaving dark marks on the rug he'd almost thrown out last winter. The door closed behind them with a soft but final click, sealing off the roar of rain. The sudden quiet made her flinch harder than the thunder had. Just for tonight, she said again, as if reminding herself it was real. Her voice trembled, not with cold alone, but with the fear of being sent back out. She kept her back to the wall, eyes scanning the room, cataloging exits, listening for sounds that didn't belong. He noticed the way her shoulders stayed raised, braced for impact. He didn't ask her name. He didn't ask where she came from. He moved to the closet instead, every step measured, keeping his body relaxed, though his chest felt tight. He handed her a towel, fresh and clean, the kind his daughter liked because it was soft. When their fingers brushed, she recoiled instantly, apology flashing across her face before fear swallowed it. Sorry, she whispered, though he hadn't said a word. Bathroom's there, he said quietly, nodding down the hall. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. He watched her walk barefoot, each step tentative, as if she expected the floor to turn on her. Beneath the harsh hallway light, he saw it clearly now, a bruise blooming along her upper arm, another shadow near her wrist. The careful way she held herself to hide them. Thunder cracked again, closer this time. She stopped mid-step, breath hitching, eyes glassy. For a second, she looked small enough to disappear. He felt something old and heavy stir in his chest, the instinct to shield, to fix, to stand between harm and the fragile. The house felt different with her in it, charged, as if danger had slipped in with the rain. He locked the door, sliding the bolt home with a quiet finality, then rested his forehead against the wood for just a heartbeat. He told himself it was only for one night. From down the hall, the bathroom light flicked on. He stayed where he was, listening to the water begin to run, knowing that whatever had chased her here hadn't stopped just because the door was closed. The house settled into its familiar nighttime rhythm, but it felt altered, like a room rearranged in the dark. He moved quietly into the kitchen, setting a kettle on the stove, the soft click of the burner sounding louder than it should have. His hands worked on instinct, mug, teabag, spoon, small, normal actions to anchor himself. He kept listening, every sense stretched thin, tracking the muted rush of water down the hall, the steady proof that she was still there. His daughter's cartoon had ended, replaced by the low hum of late-night quiet. He glanced toward the stairs just as small footsteps crept to the edge of the hallway. Her face appeared sleepy and curious, clutching the banister with both hands. "Daddy?" she whispered, voice already heavy with dreams. He crossed to her in 2 strides, crouching to her level, smoothing her hair back. "It's okay," he said, smiling when his chest wanted to tighten. "Go back to bed," she nodded, trusting him without question, and padded away, leaving him alone with the weight of that trust pressing hard against his ribs. The kettle began to whistle. He poured the water, watching steam curl upward like breath in cold air. When the bathroom door opened, he turned. The girl stood there, wrapped in the towel, hair dark and dripping, cheeks flushed from heat and fear. She lingered on the threshold, unsure if she was allowed further. "Tea," he said, pushing the mug gently across the counter toward her. She took it with both hands, fingers trembling, eyes never leaving his face. She stood instead of sitting, as if chairs were commitments she couldn't make. The kitchen light caught her features. Softer now, but still tight with vigilance. She watched the windows, the door, the hallway. Her body angled to react. He followed her gaze and realized she was listening for something specific, something that hadn't come yet. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked as the house cooled. The girl stiffened, breath caught halfway in. He spoke quickly, low and calm. "Just the house." She nodded, though her grip on the mug didn't loosen. When his daughter peeked again from the stairs, eyes half closed, the girl noticed her first. Fear flickered, then melted into something gentler. She smiled, small and careful, like it was a fragile thing she didn't use often. The child smiled back, waved, and disappeared again. Something shifted in the room. The girl's shoulders dropped a fraction. He felt it too, a crack in the tension, just enough to let hope slip through. A low-engine hum slid past the house, slow and deliberate, tires hissing on wet asphalt. The sound crawled under his skin before his mind could place it. He turned his head toward the window just as headlights swept briefly across the living room wall. The girl felt it instantly. Her spine went rigid, the mug rattling against the counter as her fingers clenched too hard. "That's them," she breathed, barely a sound. Her eyes locked on the thin gap between the curtain and the window frame like it was a loaded gun. Color drained from her face, fear sharpening her features into something older than she was. "They don't knock." The car lingered. 1 heartbeat, 2. The engine idled, patient. His pulse spiked, every protective instinct roaring awake. He crossed the room and gently pulled the curtain closed, blocking out the light, then reached for the lamp and switched it off. The room sank into shadow, lit only by the faint glow from the hallway. He motioned for her to come closer without speaking. She moved fast, silent, pressing herself into the narrow space beside him. He could feel her shaking, the tremor traveling straight through his arm. Outside, rain softened, making the quiet sharper, more dangerous. The house felt exposed, suddenly fragile, like a thin shell around something worth breaking into. The engine revved once, then rolled forward, slow enough to be watching. He held his breath, counting seconds, listening for footsteps on gravel, for the crunch that would mean it was too late. His daughter slept upstairs, unaware, trusting the walls and the man below them to hold. The car finally moved on, disappearing into the rain-soaked street. The sound faded, but the tension didn't. The girl didn't relax. She kept staring at the door as if it might open by itself. He stayed still beside her, realizing with a cold certainty that whatever she was, running from hadn't gone far, and that by opening his door, he'd stepped directly into its path. The pounding came without warning, violent and furious, shaking the door in its frame. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. The girl gasped sharply, stumbling back, her shoulder hitting the wall as if she'd been struck. Her eyes went wild, panic tearing through whatever calm she'd borrowed from the quiet. A man's voice cut through the rain, rough and impatient, calling out a name that didn't belong to anyone in that house. Each syllable carried ownership, threat. The sound crawled up the walls into the ceiling, toward the sleeping child upstairs. Fear surged hot in his chest, followed instantly by something harder, colder. He stepped forward before thinking, planting himself between the door and the girl. His body moved on instinct, shoulders squared, feet braced like roots. He lifted a finger to his lips, silent, commanding calm he wasn't sure he had. She nodded frantically, tears spilling as she clutched the towel around herself, like it could make her invisible. Another slam rattled the lock. "I know you're in there," the voice snarled. The doorknob twisted hard once, twice. The sound of metal straining echoed through the house. He reached for the lock anyway, hand steady despite the thunder of his heart. Opening it, even a crack felt like stepping into a gunshot. But he did it, just enough to face the threat head on. Rain lashed his face. The man outside loomed close, eyes sharp, searching past him into the dark. "There's no one here," he said calmly, evenly, as if this were an ordinary night, an ordinary lie. He felt the weight of it settle into his bones. The kind of lie you tell only when the truth would destroy something precious. The stranger sneered, pushing forward, but the single dad didn't move. He held the line, every thought fixed on the staircase behind him, on the small bed upstairs, on the shaking girl pressed into shadow. For a long, breathless moment, the world balanced on whether he would blink. Then sirens wailed somewhere far off, thin but unmistakable. The man cursed, stepping back, rage flashing across his face before fear replaced it. Tires screeched, water spraying as the car tore away into the night. The door slammed shut. He locked it fast, every bolt sliding home. Only then did he realize his legs were shaking. Only then did he feel how close the night had come to breaking through. The silence afterward was loud, ringing, like his ears hadn't caught up with reality yet. The girl slid down the wall, knees folding under her, breath coming in broken pulls. Words spilled out of her as if she'd been holding them back with force. "I didn't steal," she said, shaking her head hard, tears streaking down her cheeks. "They said I did. I ran. I had to." Each sentence sounded like a confession to a crime she was still being punished for. He locked the door again, slower this time, checking it twice, then a third, needing the ritual to ground himself. The sirens grew louder now, closer, their blue and red lights flickering, faintly through the edges of the curtains like distant lightning. He crouched beside her, keeping space, letting her choose how close was safe. She hugged the towel tight, shoulders caving inward. Bruises surfaced fully now, impossible to ignore. Ugly fingerprints blooming against pale skin. Rage sparked in his chest, sharp and immediate, but he kept his voice gentle. "You're safe," he said, though he didn't yet know how true it was. Footsteps thudded on the sidewalk outside. Radios crackled. The girl flinched again, fear reigniting. "They'll take me back," she whispered, eyes darting to the door. He shook his head slowly, steadying her with his gaze. "Not tonight," he said. "Not like that." A knock came, firm, controlled, nothing like before. Authority instead of threat. He stood, heart pounding, and opened the door to flashing lights and calm questions. He answered clearly, simply, every word chosen with care. The girl's story came out in fragments behind him, pieced together with shaking breaths and courage scraped raw. The night loosened its grip inch by inch. When it was over, when statements were taken and the street quieted again, he closed the door and leaned against it, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor. His hands finally started to shake. She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched, close enough to share the warmth of being alive and not alone. The night stretched thin and fragile after everything stopped moving. The house felt emptied out, as if fear had sucked the air from the walls and left a quiet that pressed against the ears. He stayed on the floor longer than he needed to, back against the door, listening to his own breathing slow. The girl remained beside him, knees drawn up, staring at nothing, as though the dark might still reach for her. Somewhere upstairs a floorboard creaked. His chest tightened instantly. He was on his feet before he realized it, moving with the practiced urgency of a father who'd learned to wake at the smallest sound. He checked the hallway, then the stairs, peering into his daughter's room. She slept peacefully, thumb curled near her mouth, unaware of how close the night had come to changing everything. Relief hit him so hard it left his eyes burning. When he came back, the girl had shifted closer to the couch, curling into the corner like she was trying to disappear into fabric and shadow. He grabbed a blanket, the thick one his daughter liked during storms, and draped it over her shoulders without touching skin. She stiffened, then slowly relaxed, the tension draining in small, reluctant waves. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she said quietly, not looking at him. Her voice sounded older now, worn down by hours of fear. He sat across from her, keeping his movements slow, visible. "You didn't," he said. "You asked for help." Her eyes lifted then, searching his face like she needed proof. For a long moment, neither spoke. The clock ticked on, steady, patient. Outside, the rain softened to a whisper, like the storm was finally letting go. She leaned back against the couch, exhaustion finally winning. Her eyelids fluttered, fighting sleep out of habit, not trust. He stayed where he was, a silent presence guarding the quiet. For the first time that night, the house felt like it might hold. Morning arrived gently, almost apologetically. Pale light slipping through the curtains as if asking permission to enter. He was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug gone cold, every sound still sharpening his senses. The house smelled faintly of rain and sleep. When he heard movement from the living room, his shoulders tightened before easing again. The girl stood near the window now, dressed in one of his old hoodies, sleeves too long, hair dry and loose around her face. Daylight softened the bruises but didn't erase them. It only made them more real. She looked smaller in the morning, younger, as if the night had aged her and dawn had taken something back. Red and blue lights washed over the walls outside, silent now, steady. An officer spoke gently on the porch while another took notes. Voices calm, procedural. The girl told her story again, clearer this time, though her hands still shook. He stood close enough that she could see him without turning her head. Each time her voice faltered, she kept going anyway. When it was done, when doors closed and engines pulled away, the street returned to ordinary. Birds started up like nothing had happened. The girl stepped onto the porch, the sun warming the damp wood beneath her feet. She paused at the top step, turning back. Their eyes met, something unspoken passing between them. Gratitude, promise, a shared understanding that one night can redraw a life. He nodded once, slow and sure, telling her she had been right to knock. She walked down the steps and into a safer future. He closed the door behind her, resting his hand against it for a moment longer, knowing that for one night, he hadn't just protected a stranger. He'd chosen to stand between fear and tomorrow.